Hi, I'm Marlene Gaybauer from the Geek and Review, and I have Sam Moore here from Legal Technology Hub, who's going to tell us a little bit about analysis of token usage and model selection.
That's right. Thank you, Marlene. Well, it is tokens everywhere. I think spurred on by the launch of Claude for Legal, but certainly going back further than that. There's an issue in the legal industry today around token usage in Gen AI tools. And in the Legal Technology Hub advisory team, we've had several conversations in the last week or two about this, both in terms of frontier models, but also in terms of the legal AI platforms. And the topics we're discussing with clients right now tend to fall into three interconnected topics. First is model selection, because a lot of these products give the users a choice of which model they want to use for a given prompt. But most users of these products really have no idea what the difference is. I've seen law firm clients whose users just pick the most sophisticated model for everything, toggle on every optional feature available, and then are confused as to why responses are taking a long time and why they're hitting token limits very, very quickly. The second's around model context windows. I've had several conversations lately about what a context window even is, how it can create drift when it gets crowded in a chat's context window, and why that really matters for legal use cases, which often involve uploading quite large documents, which take up a lot of space in those context windows. And finally, efficient token usage. Law firms and law departments, I think, are generally not that accustomed to this kind of pay-as-you-go model in technology, not unless you're like me and you recall when the big legal research platforms were on a pay-per-search basis. So now those users are running into high-cost overages on the frontier models in particular, and they're realizing that low sticker price per month is not their reality, not when their users don't know how to use those tools efficiently and how to control cost. So, as well as delivering advisory work on these topics on a one-to-one basis, we're actually working on a series of articles for LTH Premium about these topics, which will then combine into a sort of playbook for our subscribers to keep handy when they're working with Gen AI tools. And we expect to start putting out that content in early June. And if people want to know more about LTH Advisory and what we can do, they can always get in touch with us by going to legaltechnologyhub.com or by finding me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Sam, for keeping us informed about this important issue.
You're welcome.
Welcome to the Geek and Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gaybauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. And today we are diving into the rapidly evolving world of agentic legal AI. And we are thrilled to welcome Greg Dickason, who's the Chief Technology Officer at LexisNexis. Greg has a diverse background spanning telecommunications and property tech before leading LexisNexis's AI innovation in the legal sector.
Greg, welcome to the show. Greg
Thanks.
2, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
No, I think you're Greg. No, actually, you're Greg 1, and Greg Lambert will be Greg 2.
Yes.
How's that?
Yes. You'll be Greg with the British accent, and
There we
and
go.
The smarter one.
I'll be Greg recovering from a cold. So
Gives you a Barry
so,
Manilow voice, so it's good.
so Greg, let's start off. We talk a lot about agentic AI, agentic workflows. And so I want to kind of let's define that just so that we kind of know what we're talking here. So do you mind breaking down what you're meaning when you say agentic workflows that are now built into the Lexis Plus with Protégé platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like to differentiate between sort of the first generation of AI and this generation with agents and agentic workflows, if you like. And what we mean by that is the first generation, you would go and ask it a question, it would give you an answer. You would then have to do something with that answer. You'd have to go and plug it into a Word document or maybe do a bit more research and then go back with another question. It was a bit like the sage sitting on the hill. You walk up the hill, you ask a question, you get your advice, and you wander down again. Agents or agentic workflows, you've now taken that sage and you put them in your factory floor. And now when you ask them a question, it's more like you're telling them to do something. They go and do the research, but then they do something with it. They build something, they produce a document, they realize that they've got to do more research, so they have multi-steps. And so it's a much, much more powerful paradigm. You're not just asking and getting a response back, you're actually getting work done for you. And that's where I think is the huge shift with agents.
Yeah. And so how do you look at that when you're looking at the Lexis platform, and how do you where did you see the value in adding the agent process in?
So for us, it's about understanding that our customers want to get work done. They don't just want to come and understand something, do some research, and then go off. They want to get work done. They want to produce a document. And in some cases, they don't always know all the questions they need to ask. So being able to ask a more open-ended question, and we can go off and our agents can build on that, ask them questions back, and effectively create a workflow or a long-running task, which produces far closer to the output they want to get. So we recognize that as much as we've got great authoritative content, that's really powerful when you're marrying it to the workflow of your customer, so they actually know what they want to produce. And a lawyer is not producing an output from an AI. A lawyer is producing an email or a draft or a brief or something like that, and we want to help them get as close as possible to that final output.
So I imagine that agents are very important in tools like Shepard. So how do features like Shepard's Verify operate under the hood to actively cross-check AI-generated text against the LexisNexis database and prevent hallucinated citations?
I like hallucinations came up in the second question. I like that.
It's always a theme with AI, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's why we think Shepard's Verify is so important. But everybody knows Shepard. Shepard's going to tell you, is this good law? Give you a really strong signal. And that's on our platform. What we thought is it's actually good to move that out of our platform and onto your platform and wherever you are. So if you've written a document and you upload it, can we do some citation verification for you? Can we check, does that citation exist? And if it does exist, is it good law? And that's what Shepard's Verify is about. It's about taking that trust signal and giving it to you so you can use it where you are. Obviously, in our responses, we always give you a Shepard signal so you can click through and check, as well as get the signal to see how good is this law, but also in the documents you upload. So is it even verifiable, and is it still good law? And that's where it works. So how does it work under the covers? We've got Shepard's. We've turned it into a really powerful service, and that service is now available inside Protégé, so we can use it against any document. And that goes back to Greg's earlier question, which is, how is an agent different from an AI? In this case, the agent knows at this point I need to verify what I've just picked up, or I need to verify this document. So it knows that it can use the Shepard's Verify tool to do a particular task, which is to give you confidence in the output.
Do you mind giving us a scenario where if I'm an attorney and I'm working, how does that process work?
So let's say you've got
Is it smooth, or is it something that I've got to purposefully go and do?
It's relatively smooth. So let's say you've got a brief from an opposing counsel and you want to check, you can upload that onto Protégé, and we will do the verification checks for you. So you'll see the signals against your document and be able to see how well the opposing counsel's citations actually link, whether it's good law, or whether it even exists, as an example.
And is it verifying the citations only, or does it go a little bit deeper? Does it look at like what's the quoted, or how
Yeah,
deep does it go?
it looks at whether or not how well that has been treated by subsequent cases. It doesn't always go right into the argument, but it does look at how well is that being treated by subsequent cases, and therefore is this a good or bad case to use in your particular argument.
Okay. All right. So one of the things, and everyone is now talking about Anthropic, they seem to be the foundational AI model that everyone's using, and of course caused a big stir over the past few months of the SaaS apocalypse, and now the legal AI tools that the skill sets that they're bringing in. So, do you mind talking to us a little bit about what kind of relationship does Lexis and Anthropic have? Because I know you guys have used them for a long time. They've been underlying a lot of your technology for a long time. So it's not a new relationship at all. But just with them kind of announcing that they're in legal by releasing these skill sets, how does that relationship, how are you building on that right now?
I see Anthropic. One, I'm super excited about working with them. Right, the fastest growing company in history. I mean, you've seen what they've done this year. It's pretty amazing. And to your point, we've been working with them from before they were really even thinking about how they sold to enterprises. So we had and signed an arrangement with them on Amazon Bedrock, which is the way Amazon supports models, before Amazon Bedrock was live and was their way to start to work with us. I think we were one of the largest contracts they had in those very early years. So we've got a great relationship with them. It's been going for a long time. Jeff Bleich, their chief legal officer, was at one of our conferences the other day. And so therefore I see it as largely really collaborative. What's great about Anthropic is they're very open. They tell us what they're doing. They give us early access so we can test against their models. We can test and see their skills. And so that's a great place to be. But at the same time, they're moving very, very fast. And I think what they're seeing is that how do they enable the knowledge worker in general? So how can they give the knowledge worker the skills that the knowledge worker needs to get their job done? And they see Claude Cowork as sort of that generic knowledge workers interface where you can do some pretty cool stuff. But what's great is that what they're providing is a great model, a good harness, and a set of skills. And I think of those as almost the layers. If you think about old tech, you used to have the database and then the business layer and all the rest. Now you've got the model, the harness, which helps that model work in your environment, and then the skills, which tells the model how to think about a particular thing. All of those are available to us. But at the same time, we also have those available from other parties like OpenAI and Google and others. So we can pick the best of breed for the model, the harness, and the skills, regardless of which provider. And we can do that for whatever use case, for whatever type of lawyer we're serving at the particular time. So I think we're actually in this unique position where we have great content, which we can use to build skills, but we can choose best of breed at all three layers. And we're working with exciting businesses like Anthropic, which just means that we can innovate very, very fast on what they're doing. So I don't see it as too competitive. I think your other question there, Greg, was,
because you hear you hear now we're an AI. What's the phrase, Marlene? That these small
AI
firms,
powered.
basically they're an AI foundational law firm, or I'm not getting
AI native. Sorry,
AI native. And so I guess, and I think this may be a bit of a softball question, but I'll throw it out there anyway, is what is the value that having that combined Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini plus Lexis give you that if I'm a lawyer, I can't get if I just go with the foundational models?
First, because the foundational models are tuned for generic solutions. They're not tuned for what you need. So you need something that layers on top, which understands the law. Second is that the foundational model is increasingly requiring a harness to work well. So you're starting to get stuck into that harness because it's built, the two are being coupled. Think of it a bit like riding a bicycle. I can be a great athlete, I'm the model. But if I'm on a bicycle that fits me really well, I'm going to be so much better when I'm on my bike. And that's what's happening, is increasing the harness and the model are working well together. But that's making you lock in, because then it's only you getting where they've tuned that. So what we can do is we can reverse engineer and work across all of that. So we give you the best harness and the best model for a particular use case. So I think that's why. And then the skills is just a really exciting space. Skills are just not Word documents, just text documents, which tell the agent how to think. And they can call each other and they can get quite complicated, but they're basically just a set of text documents. And so if you go to Anthropic, you get a lot of great skills that are focused on just in-house counsel, but they're not focused on longer running, harder tasks, particularly in large law. And so, yes, there's some stuff you can do there, but it's not a generically strong legal platform like we provide. And we can reuse those skills and our own skills. So I think we can give you the best of all worlds.
Is there a future where, as a Lexis Plus with Protégé user, I can develop my own skill file and put that in there? Is that something?
That future's arrived already. You can upload your skills without new work.
The future is here now.
The future's arrived. But exactly to that point, you have your own way of doing work. You've already written it down. You've got your playbook. You can turn that into a skill and use it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask another value related question, sort of what your thoughts are in terms of the value of this. Because in addition to the Anthropic Alliance, you also have now an alliance with Luminance. And I imagine that is going to bring a lot of new document drafting skills, and it will be combined with the legal research skills of of Lexis. And, outside of sort of streamlining that process, where do you see the value in that combination in one interface?
I do think it's about getting your work product done without having to switch interfaces. So I do think it's the fact that you can do the research, you can start the draft, then do further research, and it can all happen in relatively seamlessly. There might be one click through to check something and then back again, but it's relatively seamless. With things like Shepard's Verify popping up to tell you, yes, this is right, this is not right. And I think that's a lot of it. If you listen to good product podcasts, it's about reducing the friction. It's from reducing how hard it is to do what you want to do. And I think a lot of those kind of integrations for us are about reducing the friction so that there's
It's also about getting people comfortable with like working in a workspace, outside of what they are currently do. Just sort of changing that whole, just changing, sort of helping with change management in terms of how they do their work, because people are kind of notorious about not wanting to change that.
Yes, it's very hard. And that for me as a product tech guy, that's one of the hardest things is getting people to change, even the small things. Like when you go into Netflix versus Amazon Prime, they scroll slightly differently. And even that I find is like, so
It's infuriating.
Yeah, well, let me ask about this because I wrote a thing about the future of the UX and that if you're not developing an interface, an experience that the user likes or works in the way that they work, they're going to go out and create their own way of accessing it, whether it's like
Or find a
what
workaround or something.
Salesforce is doing with a headless interface, or they may use the AI to access the website directly and then pull the information back in for them. So as someone that is on product side, how do you think about what the future of the user experience is as we move, especially as we move into this agentic period?
I think it's increasingly going to be simpler and simpler because the agent's going to understand your intent. And therefore, one, it's going to know about you. So it's going to have memory about you, who you are, what you care about. And then it's also going to understand the intent of this current thing you want to do. And so you don't need a complicated UX anymore. What you need is something that's simple, that's easy to engage with, but then it might diverge towards a particular use case. So if you're doing research, it might ask you some questions. If you're doing a draft, it might open a document on the side. But ultimately, it's doing that for you. So it's very curated for you. I mean, they do talk about UI AI, which is where the UI is actually created by the AI in real time. I
Yeah.
think that's immature, and I don't think it's because then the AI is almost over complicated. I think what we're going to get down to is much more simpler interface.
Yeah. I'm curious because a lot of, especially the web, is built for human interaction, and and one example is, let's say I get a web page and it gives me a spreadsheet. Well, it may only give me like 50 lines of that spreadsheet, and then I got to click page 2, right? Because that's how a human ingests it. Whereas if it's an AI interface, it would give them the entire spreadsheet, or it may give them dozens of spreadsheets all at once because it can handle that. So it's going to be interesting from a product side on how you do that.
It's definitely, and we're looking increasingly like on our digital side, we're seeing more and more traffic coming from OpenAI, from ChatGPT and Anthropic, the actual model, the open models where users have clicked through. So rather than come through by Google, they're coming via those channels. And then the question is how much of that is coming from the agent, with agents looking at our website and curating that back for the user. So it's a really interesting change. I think you're right. More and more of the web's going to be written for agents, not
Yeah.
for
Well,
users.
let us know when you figure it out, and we'll bring you back on. You can explain it to us.
I do have a question about how what you're hearing in terms of feedback from clients, because we've talked about comprehensive solutions where you can bring in your drafting, you can bring in your research, you can bring in your assistant and all those things versus point solutions. And, I know it will have to do with the actual work that needs to be performed, but there's also an increasing pressure, I think, for clients regarding the cost of these tools. So, I'm curious, what sort of feedback are you getting from clients? Are they leaning one way or the other? Anything that you can offer in terms of that insight?
I do think increasingly we're going to start to see consolidation where they want more, they want lots of different tools. I think there's been a case where they've been looking at lots and using point solutions because there's been specific point solutions that have helped for specific use cases. And I do think that's going to start to coalesce. So for example, with our system, we can now load any type of skill, which means you can start to tune our system for your particular matter and how you do your matter, and the agents can pick that up. So I do think that's going to happen. And I do think that's what our clients are starting to ask questions about. I think that's your question, right?
It is. And I had one other one. In the news we've been hearing about firms taking a large investment and building their own AI. And I'm curious, sort of what your take is on that.
They had an extra $500 million
Yeah,
laying
they
around.
Look, I think it's logical for particular workflows. I think for some things it's not that logical, but for some things it does make a lot of sense for some workflows, particularly when that is your value proposition that you take into market that your clients see from you. And I think in that case, you're going to need some really good foundational building blocks to help build that. Obviously, we see ourselves as being a key contributor in that kind of space where you've got deep legal research, deep authoritative content. But I don't see it as being just calling some dumb interface, because you need the reasoning, you need the legal logic that comes with an agent like Protégé. So it's not MCP where you're just being called. It's A to A. It's agents talking to agents. And I think that's probably the emerging space where you have an expert talking to an expert that might both be agents to help solve the client's problem. So we do see a space for that, but I do think it's agent to agent rather than agent to MCP.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we're seeing is a lot more of the firm's data is kind of being uploaded into systems, whether it's in vaults or whether it's through the Word document in the plugins, or number of different ways that the information is being accessed and somewhat commingled, I would say. We can't talk AI without also talking about security. And one of the topics that's being talked about now is the BYOK, or the bring your own key for your encryption. So how does this work with Lexis, and what's the reasoning for this, either that it works or doesn't work in the AI space right now?
I think it's critical, especially for our larger customers. They have to have it. And the point with bring your own key.
Let me stop you there. Do you mind just kind of talking about what it means to bring your own key?
Sure. So I like to think of it like a house. I've got a house, which is where you can come and you can get your work done. And you bring your documents, and I've got maybe not a house. I've got an office where I've got great workers where you can come and you can bring your documents and you can get stuff done. Now, what you want to do now is bring a lot of documents. So you don't want to longer keep bringing them in and out. You want to put them in the vault, right? And you want me to be able to access that so that my experts can give you the right results. But what you don't want is for me to be looking at your documents when you're not around, right? So what I do is I give you a cabinet in my office. You put your documents in the cabinet and you lock it, and you bring your own key and you take that key away. And then I can't access when you're not around because I don't have your key. And it's almost exactly the digital equivalent of that. You have a mathematical key which unlocks, and it first of all encrypts and then unencrypts the content I need to do the job for you. But if at any point you withdraw that key, I no longer can do work for you. And that's provable. And so I think it's a great model where you can be quite sure that the only time that your content is ever accessed is to do work for you.
So how are you and your customers implementing this with Lexis?
So exactly as you're saying, in vaults, you can now bring your own key. So you put your content into the vault. We index it, so it's all available for the AI to look at and say, okay, this piece of content works with this law to help draft that document for you. But it's locked. And the only time our AI can look at that is when you've actually logged in and you've provided your key as part of your login. And if you haven't logged in, we can't use your content. So it's built into the vault, and we can prove that. And that helps you from your security posture and perspective as a firm. Yeah.
And I'm curious if a customer came to you and they're like, well, we want to become an AI native firm, and so we're going to do all of this directly with the foundational models. Do they get to bring their own key there, or what is it that they can do in the Lexis platform that they couldn't do, if they go directly to Claude and try to upload files there?
So with Claude, typically now you're having to do it on your own laptop, and you can't build as strong a vault. So when you upload files with us, we're not just uploading them, we're indexing them and we're chunking them so they're part of a vector store. And we're doing that in a legal way. So different models and can chunk the content in different ways. We chunk it so that it's legally relevant. You can't do that directly with Claude. You have to build your own chunking and parsing layer, your ingestion layer, which properly processes the files, and then your storage layer, which stores them in a way in which they can be easily retrieved for the AI. You may have heard of RAG.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've been talking RAG for years.
Last year before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that is now, right? But
Yeah,
to have
that's
a
very
really good RAG
2022.
system, good RAG system, you need to be able to properly chunk and index. And then on top of that, you can build a knowledge graph and other ways in which it makes it easier for your agents to surface. Yeah.
So it's good to hear that Lexis is thinking about, security, like bring your own key and things like that. What do you find from clients that they are most concerned about? Is it this type of security? Is it the hallucinations that sometimes happen with cases that they see in the news? What type of conversations are you having, and how are you assuring clients that Lexis is focused very much on trustworthy output and absolute security?
Yeah, completely right. I think it's both. I mean, when we're talking to the security teams, they're interested in the mechanics of security. So things like bring your own key, making sure that what they've uploaded is properly locked away, that kind of thing. When you're talking more to lawyers, they're more interested in the hallucinations, verifiability, and to make sure that they understand how do they know that what we're giving them is good law, and how easy is it to check it? Because our position is these are non-deterministic models, right? They're probabilistic models, which means they will always come up with a small probability of saying something that's not quite right. Now, we've got lots of rules and a ton of stuff around to limit that, and we believe we're best in breed, but you still need to finally be able to verify, to check. And that's why it's very easy on our platform to be able to click through and see. You get your Shepard signals and you can easily click through onto the platform. So I think a lot of our clients are asking us, show us your security model, which we are doing, and then also show us how we can mitigate any risks of using an AI system to get more efficient, more effective, to provide services. And a lot of that comes down to reduction in hallucinations, reduction in the type of hallucination to almost zero. But then at the same time, you can always verify. You can click through and verify.
I'm curious if there's risk or things that your customers may not be thinking about now, but maybe they should be thinking about. Is there anything that I know you're probably dealing with some very smart customers who are very risk averse, but I'm just curious. Well, for example, like with, if you ever get your hands on Mythos, what
Yeah.
kind of risks do we think, are out there with
Well,
something
I
like
do
that?
think there's like two types of risks. There's the risks we're aware of, but I think where AI is going is pretty, it's mind blowing. The next 6 months to 2 years, I think is just going to be phenomenal. And if you think back to coding was agents were a bit of a toy. You got agents to write code for you, and it was a bit of a toy. Then somewhere around November, December last year, that toy became something real. And a lot of my colleagues in the tech world came back from holidays and said, wow, before the holidays, I wasn't doing much. Over the holidays, I built 5 systems that I never even thought I could do. And this is what's happened. And I think we're going to start seeing those type of step changes in other parts of the industry as well. And one of them is Mythos. So I do worry about Mythos because I think that's going to surface so many security bugs and security vulnerabilities in the next couple of months that we're going to have the spike of that happening. And we're going to need to make sure we can jump on them. I think we'll get to a much better state in about 6 months to a year's time, but there's going to be a period of time where we're all quite vulnerable, and I really like the way Anthropic's trying to roll it out to keep us on. Where else can we think? I think it's agents' ability to overwhelm us. That's something else I worry about. From a legal perspective, how many briefs can you get, and how much content can you ingest as a human. So I do think we're going to increasingly need agents to help us mediate the effective agents in terms of volume, in terms of sheer complexity of work what we're doing. And then I do think that we'll start to see new types of industries emerging, new industries which are far more agile and AI enabled, and that's going to stress the legal system just like other ways in the past have, even blockchain and that, new ways of thinking and, digital assets and all that, but it's going to happen faster. And so how do we keep up? How does legislation keep up? That's going to be a real societal challenge. Maybe we go a bit away from Lexis, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of keeping up, before we get to our crystal ball question, we've been asking our guests to kind of talk to us. How do you keep up with the industry? Are there certain things that you read or people that you listen to that kind of help you along? What's a couple of things that you use?
Well, Geek in Review is a start, of course.
Of course.
And then I also read Artificial Lawyer, Law 360. So there's a few legal things which are great. I read the Cheering Post. It's quite technical, but it's a nice email chain that you can get, Cheering Post. And then The Information. It's a technology-focused magazine, but it actually gives you some really good cutting-edge thoughts about where AI is going. That's not super technical either. So that's really where I go. But I also think a lot of the time I use Claude itself. I say to Claude, what should I know? What's happened in the last week? And I sort of just have an interactive session with Claude to learn. And that's also quite useful.
Yeah, it's one of the things we say here is use the AI to help you AI. So.
Okay, Greg, it is time for our crystal ball question. So looking ahead, a few months to a few years as AI takes over the orchestration of sort of massive document-heavy tasks through tools like Protégé Vault, what do you think is the single biggest shift coming for the traditional role of the junior associate?
So the simple question is no more junior associates. But I think the answer to that is they're not junior because they're not there. They're junior because they very quickly become senior. And I think we'll see AI helping us train junior associates, then being able to do mock trials and all the rest very quickly, not mock depositions, all of that. And so we'll see that being senior very quickly and learn a lot as a result. I think you very recently on the podcast, you had somebody who was building their training systems and that was pretty exciting to hear. And I do think that's where we're going to go. So I don't think we're going to see less lawyers. I think we're going to see the law being able to be applied to more places. Society is underserved, and I think it's going to give us the opportunity to serve more people, which is pretty exciting about where AI can take us.
All right. I like your vision. So, well, Greg Dickason, CTO there at LexisNexis, I want to thank you very much for joining us. And man, it's a lot of stuff going on. So thanks for helping us out.
Thank you, Greg.
Great to be here. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Marlene.
And thanks to all of you for listening to the Geek in Review. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and Substack.
So, Greg, where's the best place that listeners can find out more about you or about Lexis Plus with Protégé?
So jump onto LexisNexis.com/AI. That's the best place to go. And then happy for you to look me up on LinkedIn. And I think we'll post the link on this.
Yes.
And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David Zasica. Thank you, Jerry, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.